Hello and welcome again to the Mind Meld PR vlog, and I am your host, Jonathon Narvey. I am the founder of Mind Meld PR, an agency in Vancouver that helps tech companies to get media coverage. Once again, I am joined by my senior writer, Lyle Neff. Say hello, Lyle.
Hello, Mr. Narvey. How's everything going today?
Things are good. I'm enjoying this Guinness Stout.
I'm enjoying the working man's lager, if you prefer.
Very good, very good. Today's Mind Meld PR vlogcast is going to be a little bit different. Usually, we are telling you how to do PR, whether you are, maybe you're on a marketing team for, well, whatever kind of company, and you've been tasked to put out a press release, or you are a PR person and you're looking to up your skills. Great, good, happy to share. Or you're just generally interested. What is public relations about? How do I do this thing? It seems cool. So we try to give tips in every video about how to do this thing, and try to be useful. So this video, in this video, we're going to be a little less useful, but we will hopefully be informative. And so the topic is how to get into PR, how to get into public relations. And really, that's the formal title of this video, but actually it's how we got into PR, because our story is probably unlike a lot of PR people out there who work for, especially who work for big agencies. We've never worked for big agencies. So we're going to tell you about the routes we took to doing this kind of work, which is fun and creative and we love. And maybe this will inspire you. Maybe this will help you to make your own journey, find your own path if you're interested in doing public relations work, or more generally marketing work. And so I hope this is helpful in that sense. But we're not going to tell you how to do PR today. This is more about how to get into the work, how to get a job in this field. So I guess I'll kick off, and I'm going to kick off with my story, and Lyle, you're going to tell your story in a little bit. But hey,
It was more fascinating, right, Narvey?
well, there's no contest there. I will let the viewer decide who I'm talking about. How did I get into doing public relations for tech companies in Vancouver? Well, I like to say I'm a failed journalist. And that is, it has the benefit of being true. I was a reporter. I freelanced for a number of years. I worked for community newspapers in Winnipeg, and then moved to the West Coast just because it's beautiful out here. And there seemed like there was a bit more opportunity, and it's the big city. It's pretty cool. So I came out here and I took a lot of poorly paid jobs, which, I'm sure reporters today, 99% of them can relate to that. It's not the best paid work. It's a bit grueling in that you have to, just to keep your job, you have to do a really good job. You cannot be making, are you okay? Are you okay? as he's dying.
Zoom or no?
So I was saying, yeah, I took a bunch of, I worked for a company called Sterling Newswire. I was writing for, I was writing little columns that would appear in the Province and the Sun, and I think the Calgary Herald and Western Canadian newspapers. And
so you were syndicated to some degree, huh?
Yeah, but my byline wasn't there. So I was just I was the filler guy. I would, my columns would fill up space if there was room. If they, the newspaper
It's
got
just about right now. What a hellish fate for a journalist.
yeah.
Syndication without a byline, really. Could you call yourself a journalist?
Well, fortunately, yeah. Well, fortunately, I did have a bit more success on the freelance side. And when I say a bit more success, it really was just a bit. So I would get occasionally my byline would show up in magazines or newspapers for special features. Vancouver Courier, the West Ender. I think I got a couple Vancouver Sun columns, which I think I got paid $100 for or something.
That's what it is with weekly journals, of course. I wonder if our bylines ever appeared in the same edition of the same paper. I wrote for the Sun and the Courier. I had a column in the West Ender.
Yeah.
Please continue.
I'm sure we did. I'm sure our circles. I'm sure it was like ships passing in the night years ago.
Yeah.
So cut to the chase. I wasn't, doing great things in journalism, and it was my own fault. I didn't have the work ethic, I think, at that time. I didn't have I probably wasn't educated well enough, honestly. Maybe I didn't have the passion for it. I was young. And so I'm not making excuses. But yeah, I wasn't in the top 1% of journalists that, could do very, very well. So when a friend of mine who was a VP for a software company mentioned that they needed press releases and they were working with an agency based out of New York, but their agency, I think, was charging them $750, which was like, per press release. And that was like, I don't know, 15 years ago. And, I said, 750 just to write the press release, not for nothing else, like not distribution, nothing, no strategy. So I said, you know what, I can beat that price. I've seen 10,000 press releases. I'm sure. Yeah. So I started writing press releases, and they got some hits. Then they had me writing web copy, and so I started getting into the marketing side. And so, long story short, I transitioned over a period of actually several years from journalism into marketing, and ultimately found myself doing a lot of content marketing and press releases. And so I would handle basically communications for companies largely in the tech sector. I still would make my contributions in the journalistic space. I was an editor with BetaKit. I was a senior editor there, which covers tech news in Canada from coast to coast. And they're not a tiny zine. Like if you're, I know we get viewers from the US, but if you're in Canada and you're at all interested in tech, you've probably heard of BetaKit.
For sure. It sounds like you were kind of in a little swampland between the two worlds there for quite a period of time.
I was, and ultimately, eventually, I had to make it's like when you're putting your pants on. You eventually have to choose a leg to go, and you have to stick with that choice. So it did take me probably longer than I would have liked to get to where I am, but I guess the lesson in my journey, and we're about to get to Lyle's journey in a second.
Great.
Sorry, Lyle, I've been really, this has been probably super boring for you. So I'm gonna let you talk in a moment, but only for a moment, just a moment. Then it's back to me. Then it's back to me. Yeah, when it came time to form Mind Meld PR, it was just, I had a skill set that I developed over years I had a process that seemed to be getting results, and it seemed like there was a need for it, which was weird to me. But there actually aren't a lot of PR companies that seem to focus on tech, which seems to be my thing that I get excited about. So I made a bit of a jump, and it seems to be working. So that's how I got into this. There was no plan. I fell into it.
Ah, well, there's a commonality there, my friend, because there was certainly no plan for me. Is it my go now? Am I permitted?
It's your go. Well, did you fall into it, or did I drag you kicking and screaming into it?
That is arguable. That is arguable. I would say that it was certainly a string of coincidences and blunders that we're sitting here, with the successful little agency chat we are, because 6 months ago I was what you might call how to put it, a failed poet cleaning houses for a living. I mean, not to denigrate working class stuff. I've worked on a lot of like construction sites and restoration jobs, and I've cut a lot of wood. I've totaled a lot of water. I've also worked in offices. I've done this, I've done that. But for our point here, I am, I don't like to really talk about this too much. I'm a literary gentleman. I've written some poetry, and my journalistic experience was in some senses a reporter, but mostly book reviews, cultural journalism, covering book launches, hanging about with the bohemian set and so forth. And that was in addition to making a living, of course, and that's what I did for many, many years. Now, coming from that world, which I began to find distasteful after a certain period, particularly in the 2010s when, I don't want to be too cruel here, but a certain obedience to certain principles was starting to be required. And I just don't necessarily subscribe to any of those principles. And I didn't care for the cant and the saluting and the little stock phrases that you had to trot out with. And you know what I'm talking about in the literary world. And I think even a lot of people aren't necessarily into.
I don't know if I know what you're talking about, Lyle.
It's what they call the correctness of the political, I believe. It's got something to do with the term that's bandied about has to do with a kind of alertness, the opposite of sleep or whatnot. You know, I'm not saying that I'm such a hard case or whatnot, but I just, after a while, I couldn't stand it. By the turn of 2010 or so, it was thick. It was just a political miasma had settled across the entire literary landscape, and I was not going to have any of it. I would much rather clean houses, frankly. That said, I've always kept a hand in. Now, my journalistic experience was different from yours, although, as I said, we probably shared some bylines. I think that's pretty hilarious. Or shared some additions anyway. I was having a pretty good time with it for a while there. I was making fair amounts of money writing book reviews for the Vancouver Sun. I placed a couple things in Globe and Mail and this and that. Mostly I was writing for magazines and local newspapers like the West Ender, I had to call them. And that was all pretty great and pretty fun. Then the media world began to contract around, say, 5 or around 10. And the nice little sideline that I was able to have from writing poetry, talking about poetry, reviewing books, interviewing writers, and all that sort of stuff, that began to dwindle. So regardless of my politics, I was forced to find other ways to make a living no matter what. My best year, I think, was the year of 06, 07. I had a full-time job. I had a wife and a couple of small kids. I was doing pretty well. And on the side, I made, I think, $9,000 or $10,000 that year from freelancing. I had like 30 bylines in different places. I kind of thought, I'm on my way. Pretty soon I'll be able to quit this Joe job and live the life of a romantic poet, a Baudelaire of British Columbia, if you will. But then the paychecks started shrinking. I'm sure you remember this period, right? More and more was being asked of me as a journalist that I wasn't willing to give. And then there was the whole political frame too. So as you know, because folks, Narvey and I have been friends for 10, 15 years now, minimum.
I think it's, probably 10 years, I think.
I think we met through Terry Glavin back in the day.
Ian King. Ian King. That's another guy we need to get on this show.
Absolutely. We're going to have some guests at some point. Anyways, long about 11 or 12, I was just pretty much done with journalism for a variety of reasons. Basically the money, but also the political, cultural climate had changed. I'm a cantankerous old white male. There was just no zone for me anymore. See ya and goodbye. Howsoever, years go by, and I was making a fairly good living with my hands and whatnot, and that's all perfectly fine. Along comes this little cat named Narvey about 6 months ago and says, I have a few pieces of blog writing to do for my PR agency. Now, you and I used to get together, once every couple of months, have a few drinks and laughs and chit-chat about this and that. So what I remember about those days, Narvey, particularly, is that whatever you told me about your job, I wasn't even vaguely interested. I had to repeat what it was that you did. And you would make a manful effort to explain to me what it was you did. And I would just go, we just skip that tedious stuff, sing some songs and drink some beer. But you came to me last December, as I recall, with a few pieces of writing that you needed done. I don't think either of us had very high expectations, but they were blog posts of a public relations kind. You provided me a template of that particular species of commercial writing. And to my surprise, I found it easy, not incredibly easy, but relatively easy for the specialized form that it was. And even more to my surprise, I found it fun. Now, this is a long stretch, but just as when you're writing a poem that's in the form of a villanelle or a sonnet or something that's in an extremely compressed form, where the rules are very hard and fast, and you've got to pay attention to those rules, because all the juice comes out of working within those constraints. On a much smaller and, I'm sorry, dumber scale, commercial writing is like that as well. I found that the pressure of writing to these very exacting, very strange commercial standards to be not entirely unakin to the pressure of writing a really good poem within one of the classical forms. So we started talking, and I believe you had some staff losses around that point, and you said, well, maybe you should come and work for me full time. And I was like, but I'm a poet, John. I'm a poet. What if my poet friends see me gallivanting about Madison Avenue or whatever the damned equivalent is, But we started doing a bit more work together, freelance and of other kinds, and I was being drawn to it, this whole other world of public relations. Now, coming from the literary bohemian zone and getting into this, I had to ask myself certain questions about being a sellout, damaging my purity, and this sort of thing. And I realized I never had any damn purity to begin with,
Well, I think I knew you were gonna start talking about that a little bit. So, and I think we're on the same page though, that a lot of public relations and media relations people are seen as, well, I guess some people call them hacks, or what's the other phrase?
Well, mercenary might be a good term.
Spin doctors. That's the phrase I was searching for in the back of my brain.
People who don't tell the truth, for starters.
Yeah. Right. So I've got news for people who think that PR people are spin doctors. Okay, granted, some are, but they don't tend to last very long. If you are,
if I could just interrupt for a moment.
Yeah.
What if the spin is actually sick? What if the spin is suffering from health problems? Are you not going to call a doctor for that spin? What kind of monster are you?
There you go. I think what I was getting at there was reporters can spot bullshit a mile away, and they will run from it, and they will never return your email or call ever again. So you have to approach this in an honest, legit, genuine way. You cannot be a charlatan. You have to be genuine, and otherwise, you better find a new line of work really fast. So I think there's that. We both took, I think, a very meandering journey to work in public relations.
And that's a very nice way to put it. You could say that it was a series of bumbling blunders, whereby a couple of hapless goons who have no business doing this suddenly wound up deeply in over their heads. But we're not going to say that. But no, I mean, it kind of came to it accidentally. Many people do. It's not our story is not unique. it is a bit unusual, I think, in that, of course, a lot of people go to school for this stuff.
Yes, yes. So I think I wanted to touch on that too. So look, my degree was in political science. So how have I mostly put that to use in life is really being super annoying at parties. Uh, in fact, I've been at a couple of Lyle's parties in particular, where I was definitely the least popular guy in the room. And
I have to say, Narvey, the fact that we're introducing ourselves in episode 6 of our series is fairly typical, really, because collectively we've been late to a lot of parties, my friend.
indeed,
And
indeed.
been popular there as well.
Well, I think it's also in keeping with what we do. I mean, a PR person really is sort of like a power behind the throne. They're helping to support someone else's brand. We're not putting ourselves out there first and primarily. We are acting on behalf of our clients to give them the brand recognition and the voice that they want to, you know, the results for PR that they get. So they get media coverage. They will maybe get a boost to if they're searching for funding. Well, now they can tell their story a bit better. If they're trying to compete in a crowded space, well, now they can differentiate themselves because there's 5 other companies doing something similar, but they don't get all the news hits. Anyways, it's a bit of a
sorry.
sorry, it's a bit of a digression. I think I wanted to talk about even though we meandered to get to this place, we would have just kept meandering, except that our skills found a fit, and we're providing value to clients with this skill set. So if you come into public relations not because you're trained for it, you didn't go to university or college, and you didn't take any special training, is it possible to get involved with PR? It's harder. You're going to have to strike out on your own. And the key skill that you're going to have is communication. You're going to be a master communicator. You're going to be an excellent writer. Writing is such a huge part of this business. And it's not just writing a press release once in a while. It's you're writing pitches constantly. You're reaching out to editors. You're reaching out to you're also communicating with your clients and your
blog posts, content libraries, writing all day long, every day is, to me, pretty enjoyable. As you know, I'm not necessarily a big fan of all the nose to the grindstone outreach stuff that we have to do. But trying to find like a really fun, really entertaining, really information-packed way of saying things that are actually worthy of being said. You know, the reason I'm in this trade is I don't think any of this is necessarily trivial. You know, John, we talked about how we meandered or blundered was my preferred term into this field. But let's also note that the action of history also functions a little bit here too. This moment in technology companies, particularly in our part of the world, provides the opportunities for goons like us to kind of, in a sense, luck into it, as well as, you know, I'm not going to be too self-deprecating here. You know, we got some skills, we do a good job, and we have an eye for the main chance. But the main chance only exists because of the actions of thousands of tech company leaders, of business people, essentially, who collectively are making a kind of history that we're fortunate to be part of.
Yes, yes. I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because it's not just about having skills. It's about targeting the right kinds of clients that are going to have stories to tell and budgets to pay for this kind of thing. So I think I mentioned earlier that I was kind of surprised when I started up Mind Meld PR that there weren't more companies doing that. It really does seem like most PR companies are aiming at either big consumer brands like Coca-Cola or Lululemon, or that's their ideal client.
Or crisis PR, the actual
yes.
PR.
Yes, or working for big companies that you know what, for crisis PR, I think it's actually a lot of governmental work. So, you know, that is kind of never ending. Governments are always
All
in
different types of
crisis.
work we mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's not, it's not really what we do, but well, I chose tech PR because number one, there's an opportunity there. I mean, every company is kind of a tech company these days, so it's a big market, whether it's clean tech, fintech, AI, you know, software as a service.
To say the
There's
marks of Narvey, you needn't actually go in with a lengthy and somewhat tedious list. You just say it's a historical factor, all right?
trying to SEO this thing verbally.
Information rich, I'll grant you that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that was kind of sorry. I missed the mark there. But yeah, I chose this because not just because there's a lot of companies that will have budget, although that's a factor. It's different from doing public relations for nonprofit entities that often their budgets are pretty limited, and it gets into the politically correct territory that we were trying to avoid by going into more traditional literary domains. And then the other thing about tech companies is it's actually easier for us to pitch that news. I remember doing PR for a cafe. Like I did a press release for a cafe that had it was selling cream pies. I think I can't remember what it was, but and it was actually a successful campaign. They totally sold out like 400 pies
Tiny
in
niche.
like 3 days. It was tiny niche.
I can imagine you sitting around writing press releases about cream pies. That's a blast.
It was, yeah, well, it was fun and it worked, but that was kind of a blip. And there wasn't really much else to say besides this was the cafe that had won an award for like the best kind of cream pie in the city. And I guess people were crazy about cream pies that weekend, whatever. But if with technology, there's genuine stories there. So if you're working on a clean tech story, well, there's almost automatic interest there because everyone wants to save the planet. If you're working on fintech, well, everyone wants to learn how to make money or save money. So fintech is, your stories, you have a boosted chance. AI is really interesting to a lot of people, even people who are not very technical, because either they want to know how the robots are going to help them do what they do, or they're worried that the robot is going to take their jobs. They want to know that news. So, so it's about I was trying to choose a niche for Mind Meld PR where number one, I was making use of my skills, but also it's going to make it easier for myself. Frankly, it's easier to tell stories related to tech. There seems to be more interest in that. I'm probably, screwing ourselves right now because there's, whoever is watching this is like, yeah, okay, I'll be a PR guy, and yeah, okay, I'll go after tech too. And now I'm breeding our next competitor, but that's okay. You've got 10 years to catch up.
I'll tell you, man, honestly, I was telling you before how I used to poo-poo you when you told me like you did this esoteric job. When you transitioned from that investment company to Beta Kit to Tech PR, I paid no attention whatsoever. It all struck me as incredibly tedious. I mean, you're a fun guy, But having been at it for several months now, I feel lucky. Like, I'm not an intellectual, okay? I'm not a big brain guy. Still less am I a tech guy. But I'm actually interested in certain philosophical questions about what the human mind is, what perception is, what awareness is, and most particularly what self-awareness is. And as you know, one of our clients delves very heavily into some of this very tall forehead stuff. And I get very wrapped up in it. I know the difference now between machine learning, what are the other kinds? Oh, I've forgotten it now. Kubernetes, machine learning, reinforcement learning, various paths to AI, how far away we are from anything that could be considered actual general intelligence. And in my own tiny little way, by just pointing out and polishing up things that the real minds in this field have to say, I feel like I'm contributing. And more importantly, I feel like I'm genuinely interested. Poetry is still more interesting, still better, still finer and truer. But this stuff's all right too.
Well, I'm glad you find it all right. Okay. Well, I think that pretty much covers it. That this was, as usual, it was a very fun conversation. Thank you very much, Lyle. You've been listening to the Mind Meld PR vlogcast with Jonathon Narvey. That's me, the founder of Mind Meld PR. And I don't know why I'm dancing my head around. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I really screwed up this conclusion. Sorry.
Oh, well.
Okay. And before we go, I want to thank our senior writer, Lyle Neff, who told his story from the depths of his heart. And I'm never going to forget it.
To me, man, I have a little shit to do. Hold on.
Okay. All right. Let's get out of here. All right.
Wrap it up. We'll
see you next time.